Magnesium, just by way of like a 10,000 foot view, is predominantly an intracellular mineral. So that means it is actually shifting and moving through our cells. It actually is getting into your cells. It facilitates as many as 300 enzymatic reactions. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Energetically Efficient Show. My name is Kristin Rowell. I am your host. And today we're talking about something that I haven't talked about on the podcast before, which is the topic of minerals. Now, before you're like, this sounds like an annoying science lesson. I don't want to go back to middle school biology right now. I want you to encourage you to actually pay attention to this podcast episode because I think you're going to really be excited about what some of this information is. And it might answer a lot of questions for some of the symptoms that you've been having. And maybe for you moms, the symptoms that your kids have been having, because I cannot get over how interesting of a conundrum it is for the human body to be deficient in minerals and how common that problem really is in our modern society. So I'm going to give you a lot of different facts and figures today about minerals, but I'm probably going to focus on the one that I love the most. And it's one that I know that you've all heard of, which is called magnesium. I could do an entire teaching on magnesium, so I'll do that in a separate podcast episode. But for today, I want to talk specifically about the importance of minerals, why we need minerals, what signs to look for if you're deficient in minerals, and what you can do in order to correct those imbalances. So before we get started, just as a reminder, I have a wait list going for my course that I launch twice a year called Hot and Fit AF over 40. I'm going to put a link below this video. So if that's interesting to you, if you're a woman in perimenopause, about to be in perimenopause, or maybe you're in menopause or haven't been cycling for a while, this course is for you. It's really the course where I teach so much in depth about how we can lose the perimenopausal and menopausal weight gain and get ourselves back to be the fittest, hottest version of ourselves over the age of 40. So I'd love to have you in that experience. And if you want even more in-depth support where we can really go truly intimate with each other, I offer limited spots each year for my private one-on-one coaching. And I'll put a link below this video as well. So make sure you check that out below this video. Okay, so let's talk about what minerals are in the body. So from a nutritional therapy perspective, which is what I practice, minerals are truly one of the foundations of our health. They're way more important than vitamins. And before you're like, wait, I thought vitamins and minerals were all kind of in the same category. That's not true. Minerals are so important for our body, you guys, because our bodies are undergoing literally hundreds of enzymatic reactions every second. And we need minerals for a lot of those enzymatic reactions to take place. And in fact, when you think of the term electrolytes, and we're going to talk about electrolytes today, electrolytes are minerals. Electrolytes are needed for our body because our bodies are truly made up of electricity. We are energetic beings, and our bodies have electrical charges happening all of the time. So when we look at a nutritional therapy perspective in terms of what the foundations are of our health, it really comes down to 7 things. So the first 4 things are all parts of our digestive system. So the first 4 components that are the foundations of your health are your upper GI, that's your upper gastrointestinal tract. Second is your liver and gallbladder. Third is your small intestine. And fourth is your large intestine or your colon. So those first 4 parts of the foundations of health make up your digestive system. Again, upper GI, liver and gallbladder, small intestine, and large intestine. And then the next most important part of the foundations of your health is your mineral needs, your mineral balance. Do you have enough minerals to support all of the different bodily functions that your body needs and relies on minerals to do? And then 6th is essential fatty acids. And I'll do a whole separate podcast episode all about the importance of essential fatty acids, what they do for the body and where we get them. And then 7th is blood sugar regulation. So making sure we have steady blood sugar throughout the day. It's one of the reasons I always recommend a continuous glucose monitor. I wear one all of the time so that you can really understand your blood sugar. So that's 7th. So just again, for the foundations of health, from a nutritional therapy perspective, it's the 4 parts of your digestive system, which I talked about. It's your mineral balance, which is 5th. It is your essential fatty acid balance, and then it's your blood sugar regulation. And if we can get those 7 things under control and more importantly, optimized in your body, you're going to feel and look so much better. You won't even believe it. So today we're talking about minerals, which is again, that 5th concept. So the first thing I want to talk about, there is a list. There are almost 30 of these. I think we have 29. But I want you to just listen to me as I go through this list. And I want you to either make a mental note or maybe make some tally marks in your phone or maybe make a list on a piece of paper in terms of how many of these symptoms do you have? And if you have these symptoms every day, I want you to give yourself 3 points. If you have these symptoms multiple times a week, I want you to give yourself 2 points. And if you have these symptoms once or more per month, I want you to give yourself 1 point. Okay. So 3 points if you experience these things every day, 2 points if you experience these things multiple times a week, and 1 point if you experience these multiple times per month. And then you're going to tally those up and we're going to talk about them. Okay. So the first is if you have a history of carpal tunnel syndrome. And this isn't a 3, 2, or 1. This is just give yourself 1 point if you do have a history of that and 0 if you don't. History of lower right abdominal pain or ileocecal valve problems. And when you think of the lower right abdominal pain or ileocecal valve, that's really close down to, for women, it's where you might think of where like your right ovaries are, or really close down to where the crease is, where the trunk of your body meets your leg. So if you have pain down in that really lower region, I just want you to give yourself a 1 if that's a yes, or a 0 if it's a no. If you have a history of stress fractures, this can be a sign of a mineral deficiency. Give yourself a 1 if you have said yes, and give yourself a 0 if you've said no. And then do you have bone loss? So if you have reduced bone density on a DEXA scan, is that something? Give yourself a 1 if you do, and give yourself a 0 if you don't. And if you haven't had a DEXA scan and you don't know, maybe leave that one blank for now, because you might make a difference here later. And then the other one that is a yes or a no is, are you shorter than you're used to be? So if you're shorter than you used to be, give yourself a 1 for a yes and a 0 for a no. Now on the rest of these, this is the 3, 2, 1 scale that I talked about at the beginning. So again, give yourself a 3 if this happens every day, 2 if it happens multiple times a week, 1 if it happens more than once a month, or once or more a month. Okay. So the first one is calf, foot, or toe cramps at rest. And you may have heard of this before, that this is a magnesium deficiency, which is true, but it also, like multiple minerals, can be at play here. So calf, foot, or toe cramps at rest. Another one is if you have cold sores, fever blisters, or herpes lesions. So again, if that happens daily, 3, weekly, 2, monthly, 1. Frequent fevers, that's another one. Frequent skin rashes and or hives, that's another one. Another one, and this is going to be one of our yes-no questions, so 1 point for yes, 0 for no, is have you ever had a herniated disc? Pain with a herniated disc, or just a herniated disc, or been diagnosed with that. And then here's another bunch of them that I'm going to go through. Give yourself a 3, 2, or 1 for these. If you have excessively flexible joints, or if you're someone who's double jointed. Do your joints pop or click? Do you have pain or swelling in your joints? Bursitis or tendinitis. History of bone spurs. And for the history of bone spurs, again, because that's a history one, let's give yourself a 1 for yes and a 0 for no. Now we're going back to the 3, 2, 1 scale. Morning stiffness. So again, if you have morning stiffness in your joints or in your body every single morning when you wake up, you're going to give yourself a 3. If it's just a few times a week, a 2. And if it's just a few times a month, you're going to give yourself a 1. Next one, nausea with vomiting. Next one, crave chocolate. All my ladies who are chocolate cravers, you got to give yourself points on this one. Do your feet have a strong odor? And for moms, I want you to think about this when it comes to your kids. Do you ever notice that your kids' feet have a strong odor? They could be mineral deficient. Did you know that's a sign of mineral deficiency? Do you have a tendency towards anemia? Have you ever been told by a doctor that you have anemia because your blood work, you have low iron? Are the whites of your eyes, okay, the whites of your eyes, so around the pupil, around the iris, are the whites, do they have like a bluish tint? You may be running to the mirror right now to look at it because it's not something you may have ever heard of before. Do you find that you have periods of hoarseness? Are you hoarse in your throat? Do you have difficulty swallowing? Do you have a lump in your throat? Do you have dry mouth, eyes, and or nose? There's just 4 more. Do you gag easily? Did you know that gagging easily is a sign of a mineral deficiency? I have like 0 gag reflex. I always laugh about that. It's because I have such good minerals. Do you have white spots on your fingernails? That's another sign of mineral needs. Do you have cuts that heal slowly and or do you scar easily? That's another sign of mineral need. And last, but certainly not least, a decreased sense of taste or smell. Now, some of you may be saying, well, I didn't have that and then COVID happened and COVID ruined my sense of taste or smell forever. If it was that caused your loss of taste or sense or smell, that's not what I'm talking about. But if you have if you just notice a decreased sense of taste or smell, that could be a sign of mineral needs. So I want you to tally up everything that you have. Now, remember, you either gave yourself a 3, 2, or 1, or for some of those other questions in the beginning and throughout, you gave yourself a 1 or a 0. So if you have more than 12, you have a moderate mineral deficiency. And if you have more than 19 points for that, you have a high mineral deficiency. And we really, really need to get high quality vitamins, or rather minerals, into your body. So a lot of these are so interesting because they're not things that you would associate with needing minerals. And so then you might be saying, okay, Kristin, well, I noticed I have more than 12 of these. I have 15 of these. I have 20 of these. I have 25 of these or more. And you have mineral deficiency. What do you do about it? The first thing that I would mention, and I will put a link below this video because I want to tell you about my favorite electrolytes. And those are Redmond Relight electrolytes. Okay. You can go to the Redmond website. You can use the code GOLDEN15 and that will give you 15% off your order. And by the way, you guys, you don't just have to get their electrolytes. You could get their Redmond's real salt. One of my favorite seasonings they have is their steak seasoning. They have all sorts of different things. You could get their toothpaste. They just came out with a new hydroxyapatite toothpaste, which is amazing for your teeth. So you could do that. They have all sorts of products and you can get 15% off your entire order with the code GOLDEN15. But when I talk about electrolytes, what I really mean when you go to their website is their Redmond Relight Hydration. Now, I love every single flavor of this, but my favorites are lemon lime, watermelon lime, strawberry lemonade, and pina colada. Those are the ones that I drink the most. And then they've had some limited flavors that are also my favorite. I'd say my hands down top has been salty Palmer, which is like an Arnold Palmer. So it's like a lemonade and iced tea mix flavor, which is so yummy. And then they also just recently came out with grape. And it's so funny because they had a kids grape flavor and I was buying the kids electrolyte and then just using like more than one scoop to have adult amount of minerals put in my body. And I love the Redmond's Relight electrolytes. They don't have any sugar in them. They're sweetened specifically with stevia, so they aren't going to do anything to your blood sugar. One of the things I go crazy about is how many fandangled electrolytes there are on the market, like one that I hate, which is called Liquid IV, because it has cane sugar as one of the first ingredients. And so parents are unwittingly giving this to their kids, thinking they're giving them healthy electrolytes, when in actuality, they're just pumping their bodies full of sugar, which we don't need more of in our modern society. So consider getting Redmond's Relight electrolytes if you want to boost your minerals. Now, let me just back up and give you guys a 10,000 foot view. When I say minerals, what am I even talking about? Well, we have macro minerals and micro minerals. So when I'm talking about macro minerals, those are really the things I'm talking about when it comes to electrolytes. So the other way I like to describe these is to think of the EMs: magnesium, potassium, calcium, sodium. And then we also have phosphorus, and I think there's one of it that escapes me right now: sodium, magnesium, calcium, potassium, phosphorus, and I'm going to have to look back at my list because I still feel like I'm missing one. But in any event, when we have our macro minerals, they're called macro because those are the minerals we need in the most amount. Just like, remember when I've talked to you guys in prior episodes about macronutrients, and remember our macronutrients are our carbs, protein, and fat. That's because those are the nutrients separate from our vitamins, separate from our minerals, separate from even fiber. Those are the nutrients that we need in the most amount. Okay. Now I would argue that you don't need carbs in the most amount and that protein or fat are far more critical. But the point about the word macro in front of these things is we need more of those. So whereas calcium, potassium, sodium, magnesium, phosphorus are needed in a higher amount, what's needed in a lesser amount in terms of minerals are things that you've also heard of, like zinc, like manganese, like rubidium, lithium, molybdenum, copper. So these are all also minerals, but those are your micro minerals. So you don't need those in as much amount. But if you are someone who rated yourself higher than 19, if you had higher than 19 points, I recommend that you get a super high quality multi-mineral. You might not even be deficient in vitamins. Now, it's possible that you are because of minerals, but I see clients' forms all of the time when they fill out my nutritional therapy paperwork where they're deficient in minerals, but they actually are doing pretty okay in the vitamin category. So just because you need a ton of minerals doesn't mean you need a ton of vitamins. So if you gave yourself a really high number on this, a really high score, then I recommend you get a really high quality mineral. And I will put a link below this video to one of my favorite mineral supplements. It's by Biotics Research Corporation, and it's called Multi-Mins. And it really gives the body a number of really high quality minerals. So I'll make sure that I put a link below this video for you. Okay. So when we have these mineral needs, when we're having more of these symptoms, what might our body experience once we start giving ourselves these minerals? Well, as you would think, a lot of the symptoms that we talked about would go away. Your joints would stop popping or clicking. You would stop having the bursitis, the tendonitis, the morning stiffness. You wouldn't crave chocolate as much. Your feet wouldn't smell as much. You wouldn't have this gag easily reflex. All of these things would start to subside because all of those things are signs that are screaming out to your body that you need more minerals. And just to make sure I contextualize for you guys where I got this list, I, as a nutritional therapist, had to spend an entire module of nutritional therapy school. So this was weeks and months on end, learning all in depth about minerals. And so one of the books that I have that I absolutely love is Signs and Symptoms from a functional perspective that helps us understand what the signals are that our body is giving us when we are deficient in some of these foundations of our health that I mentioned to you with those 7 foundations, which are also the 7 foundations of nutritional therapy. Okay. So I mentioned to you that I was going to tell you specifically about magnesium because I want to focus just on that mineral. And then I'll do a separate podcast in the future, likely, about all of the different variations and forms of magnesium because there are simply so many and people are confused. But I will, at the end of this episode, give you just a couple quick takeaways about the forms of magnesium that I recommend that seem to be, from all of the research I've done, the most optimal for health and the best bang for your buck, depending on what the issue is that you're trying to solve. Okay, so magnesium, just by way of like a 10,000 foot view, is predominantly an intracellular mineral. So that means it is actually communicating, or rather, communicating isn't the right word, moving through or shifting and moving through our cells. It actually is getting into your cells. It facilitates as many as 300 enzymatic reactions. So one of the things I love to tell clients when I'm strength training them is, okay, when you're doing that bicep curl, when you're pushing out on the leg press, when you're doing the low back machine, all of those muscular contractions require minerals. This is why one of the best pre-workouts that you can do, you guys, is to put electrolytes in your water. Like literally put electrolytes in your water before you go to your workout. In fact, I love to shout out one of my friends, who is very much into strength training like me. She is an OBGYN. I'm going to shout her out. I'll put a link below the video to her Instagram page because I adore her. It's my friend, Dr. Jamie Seaman. She's an OBGYN. And as an OBGYN, she often has to be at the hospital, obviously overnight. She has to be there really early in the morning. But on the days that she has a morning shift, she might be going to do her lifting workout at 4:30 in the morning. So she doesn't have time to drink this whole thing with all of those electrolytes to give herself a pre-workout and get those minerals in her body to make sure that her muscles are contracting well during her workout. So what does she do? She loves Redmond's Relight like I do. So she will pour a scoop of Redmond's Relight under her tongue and absorb all of that amazing salt and those minerals and just hold it there for a little bit and then wash it down with water simply to get those minerals in her body so that she has a really good workout that early in the morning. Isn't that cool? So you can use electrolytes as a pre-workout. It's really the key pre-workout because it's what your body needs to undergo awesome muscle contraction. Okay. And then just by way of a couple fun facts that I want to read you here about magnesium. So 60% of magnesium in the body is found in the bone, and then 25% is in muscle, and the remainder is in the fluids and soft tissue. So you have 25% of the magnesium that you consume that goes directly into your muscle. Can you see why you need it in your body if you want to strength train? It's also found in high concentrations in your mitochondria. So the healthier your mitochondria is, the more you're going to notice that magnesium is there. And it's also found in high concentrations in the heart. If you are deficient in minerals, it does cause a fair amount of calamity in your heart because we want to make sure we have minerals. This is why one of the doctors who understand the most about high blood pressure, for example, or understand the most about heart conditions know that if someone presents with that, you don't take the sodium away from them. You actually give them more sodium, which is counterintuitive to what most people have heard. They're like, wait a second, I have high blood pressure. I'm supposed to reduce my sodium. No. The smartest doctors who really understand this stuff will tell you to increase your sodium and decrease your carbohydrate consumption, and that will help lower your blood pressure. Fascinating information. Okay. And then in terms of the functions of magnesium, what it does And I want to share this with you because a lot of people are like, I know I'm supposed to take magnesium, but why? Like, what is it actually doing in my body? It's creating integrity of your teeth and bones. So your teeth and bones obviously need magnesium in order to work well. It's regulating the contractility of the heart muscle. So I already mentioned the importance of the heart. It relaxes smooth muscle. It decreases coagulation of the blood. It's necessary for essential fatty acid metabolism. Remember when I told you that the sixth foundation of your health is this fatty acid deficiency? So you have to have it to be able to metabolize the fatty acids that you're consuming. So minerals create that function as well. It's essential for protein synthesis. So for all of my protein consumers like me, we have to have magnesium in order to synthesize all of that awesome protein that we're consuming. And then used to produce urea. We use magnesium to produce urea in the urea cycle in the liver. And then along with vitamin B6. So if you think of vitamin B6 and magnesium, those two compounds, those molecules together, one being a vitamin, one being a mineral, they help prevent kidney stones. Now, I would say my energetic coaching and my intuitive coaching and the work that I do in the spiritual realm, I know that kidney stones, if you're someone who suffers from them, setting aside the physical, kidney stones can be a strong representation of stored childhood anger. So if you're someone who's prone to kidney stones, I would recommend that you consider working on some inner child work. You might consider getting the inner child workbook off of Amazon. You might consider working with a practitioner who can help you release some childhood anger. I mean, I certainly work with my one-on-one clients in terms of what the energetic things are and the root causes of things that keep them stuck. So if that's something that's interesting to you, again, look below this video and you can consider applying to work with me in a one-on-one setting. But some food sources of magnesium, and I will say before I even identify any food sources, I need you to know that the way that our soil has been depleted over the last 100 plus years means we get a very little bit of magnesium from our food. Unfortunately, it's one of the problems with magnesium is that because of the soil depletion and things like these xenoestrogens that we have in our system, or even the exogenous estrogens we take in the form of estrogen therapy, etc., that can make us have some magnesium deficiency. So it's really important for us to be taking magnesium. In fact, I remember years ago when I read the Galveston diet book, this is one of the first, I think it was the first book that Dr. Mary Claire Haver wrote. Some of you may be aware that she recently wrote The New Menopause. She's now come out with a new book called The New Perimenopause. She talked about for women that are in perimenopause and menopause, there's 4 things that we need to focus on. And I do agree with her in this. And those 4 things are, you guessed it, magnesium. That's one of them. Another one is having adequate essential fatty acids. I also agree with her on that. So that's super high quality fish oil. And I will make a high quality fish oil recommendation to you by putting a link below this video. High quality fish oil is something I take every day. It's such an important compound. And then she also said you need to get adequate vitamin D. I also agree with her there. And fourth, but certainly not least, and I love this one, fiber. Ladies, in perimenopause and menopause, we have to consume more fiber. So just again, that's magnesium, essential fatty acids, vitamin D, and fiber. And I do agree those things came from the Galveston diet, but I agree that those 4 things are key to our health. And remember when I was talking about all of the foundations of health, notice that both magnesium and essential fatty acids are on that list. And fiber, of course, and vitamin D play components of your health as well. So I will go over food sources with you as to where you can get more magnesium, but it really is something that you must supplement with. So in addition to the Redmond's Relight Electrolytes, I'm going to put below this video links to my absolute favorite sources of magnesium because not all magnesium is created equal. And again, like at the end of this video, I said I would talk about the forms that I like the most. Okay, so here are some food sources where you can find magnesium. And again, don't rely on this exclusively. We need to supplement. And those food sources are buckwheat flour, whole wheat flour, tofu, almonds, wheat germ, cashews, brown rice, and kidney beans. Those are some of the primary places that you can get magnesium. I would say another major source that I rely on with clients is dark leafy greens. That's another source where you can get a lot of folate. I always think this is a fun fact, is dark leafy greens are like foliage. That's where the term folate comes from. So we know that we can get more folate from eating dark leafy greens, but magnesium as well. Okay. So of course, clinical uses of magnesium. A lot of people think of, oh, I'm constipated, I need to take magnesium. And it is true that magnesium can help with constipation because magnesium truly does help the body relax and it really supports the body in terms of, like I said, the muscle contraction. And of course, if you're constipated or if you want to create peristalsis, so you have a bowel movement, there's like muscle contraction involved in that. So it naturally follows and makes sense that magnesium would be helpful. But really, if we're thinking about constipation, the form of magnesium you would take that I don't take regularly, but that's really good for constipation, is magnesium citrate. It's one of the cheapest, most inexpensive forms of magnesium. If you take too much of it, you will get diarrhea, no question. So if you suffer from constipation, magnesium citrate in the form of something easy that you can get like at a regular drugstore, like a Natural Calm, has magnesium citrate in it. Okay. So you would also use magnesium for muscle cramping. Remember when we went through the long list of the nearly 30 things that are signs of mineral deficiencies? One of them is muscle cramping. Your calves, your toes, your legs are cramping at rest. That's a sign of mineral deficiencies. Magnesium really, really helps with that. And then if someone has acute angina or after myocardial infarction, so after you have an MI, after you have some sort of cardiovascular heart issue or something that serious, magnesium could be prescribed to you in order to support your heart health. So why would you wait until you have a condition like that? Why wouldn't you just take magnesium prophylactically so that you could make sure that you're supporting your health year round? And then a couple other things, like I already mentioned, is the kidney stone prevention. And a lot of women use magnesium to help with symptoms of PMS, of menstrual cramps, and those kinds of things. Magnesium can also come in handy, of course, for migraine headaches. So that might be something you're deficient in if you're suffering from migraines a lot. I always say that migraines are a classic sign of inflammation in the body. Really, like headaches in general are a sign of inflammation in the body. And so magnesium can help to reduce inflammation in the body, which is one of the reasons we would use it in the case of migraine headaches. Okay. So let me talk now about the kinds of magnesium that I like to take. And again, I will put some links below this video so that you can consider taking the ones that I take or something similar. So I think I'll say I'm going to talk to you about 3 forms of magnesium. Actually, 4 forms of magnesium. And there are a lot of different forms of magnesium. I already mentioned magnesium citrate, which I think is great if you're constipated. But the primary forms that I take, and I'm going to talk about my top 2 or 3, my top 2 or 3, and then I'll talk about a 4th. My top 2 or 3 are magnesium threonate. Okay, so magnesium threonate, THERONATE. And I'll, again, put a link below as to one of the ones I take, is excellent because it is the magnesium that crosses the blood-brain barrier. And so it can be very beneficial for sleep, especially helping with REM sleep, with rapid eye movement sleep, which is that really awesome restful sleep where our brain is recycling out waste, where we're having these vivid dreams. It's a really, really good, important component of sleep. So that is the rapid eye movement sleep, and that can be from magnesium threonate. So I really like that form. I take that every single night before bed. And then the other form that I take before bed is either or both magnesium glycinate or magnesium glycerophosphate. Glycinate and glycerophosphate are very similar forms of magnesium, but those can help with relaxation. They help with muscle contraction. They also help with sleep. They really help to support the magnesium balance in the body, and you get the most bang for your buck because they are a higher bioavailable form of magnesium, and they're not just something that's going to cause you to have loose stools. And it's a cheaper, more inexpensive form. So glycerophosphate and glycinate, and I'll put a couple of brands and types that I take and that I recommend. And then there's another form, magnesium, and forgive me, but I can't remember if it's called magnesium oxide or OX. I'm going to put a link below this, but that's another form that you may take as well. And that's just as a general overall magnesium that your body can use and absorb well to support all of the muscle contraction and the deficiency of magnesium that you may have in your body. So those are really my highlights that I want to make about magnesium. I'll do a different episode where I go into the differences between all these different forms so you can say, oh, this is actually my issue and this is why I need magnesium. I'd say magnesium malate is another one that we think of. I use magnesium malate specifically when I'm going to do a liver and gallbladder flush. I use that because it usually comes, depending on the brand that you buy, with malic acid, and that can be really good for softening gallstones before you do a liver and gallbladder flush. So I'd say magnesium malate is another one that I look at. So again, threonate, glycerophosphate, glycinate, malate, and then the ox one, which I have to get the full name of, and I apologize that I didn't have that for you before this video. Okay, so mineral balance is a key component of your health. I want you to think about that list that we went over in the beginning of the podcast. If you were driving, didn't have time to make your list, go back and listen to that portion. Maybe consider getting your kids involved or your partner or spouse involved, or other people that you love involved to see if they have mineral deficiencies. And then make sure you check out all of the links below this video where I am giving you all of my best recommendations for where you can get high quality magnesium and other minerals to optimize your metabolic health. Thank you so much for being part of this episode, for listening throughout the entire episode. And I look forward to seeing you on another episode of the Energetically Efficient Show. Bye-bye.